Today I'm going to be making creamy butternut squash mushroom risotto. I'm going to be using 1 butternut squash, 4 cloves of garlic, I've got some kale, I've got some onion here, I got 8 ounces of mushrooms. I'm going to be using 1 cup of arborio rice to 3 cups of vegetable broth. The first thing I usually like to do is to start getting the broth warm. So let's go ahead and get that started. I'm going to go ahead and put this on low. And now it's time to start cutting up the vegetables and getting them into the frying pan. There, so I've cut this up. I'm going to go ahead and save the other half of the butternut squash for another meal. Go ahead and cut up these mushrooms. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save this kale for just a little bit later. We'll get these vegetables frying up a bit. I like to get them caramelized a little bit so they have that nice flavor. It's already starting to look really beautiful. You got the butternut squash in there, the brown of the baby bellas, a little bit of those onions in there. It's starting to smell really good. Now, I always have a little bit of vegetable broth on hand, so if I need to put just a little bit of moisture in there, I can. Now, I like to put in a little bit of pepper, a little bit of salt. Okay, these are coming along real nice, but every so often, I add a little bit more of my vegetable broth. Now, this is not the broth from the 3 cups. This is separate from the broth. It's just to keep all of this sautéing happening and not burning it. So just keep adding a little bit more of the broth. And the whole trick of it is to try to get those butternut squash kind of soft, a little bit more creamy tasting. But it all kind of depends on the size of the butternut squash, the pieces that you make. But these are still kind of not quite cooked all the way, so I want to make sure they get nice and soft. Of course, one way to check it out is to just go ahead and grab one. Yeah, it's almost there. Almost there. So we're coming along. Now see, it's starting to dry up a little bit. You can hear it. So I'll go ahead and add just a little bit more vegetable broth. There. I can smell the garlic, the onions, those mushrooms, and the butternut squash. It's coming along real good. See, there's just a little bit of moisture in there. You can just kind of see it. It's just at the bottom of the pan. That means I'm okay. But once you start to hear it starting to scorch a little bit, go ahead and add a little bit more vegetable broth. This is looking really good. Okay, these vegetables are coming along really good. So I'm going to go ahead and push them all to one side. Get my rice in there. Let's put a little bit of the broth in there. All I want to do is just kind of get the rice to be a little bit more translucent, just kind of crisp it up a little bit. Go ahead and add a little bit more broth. I'm adding just a little bit of the broth in there just to kind of get the rice to sizzle a little bit. Okay, I'm going to put a teaspoon of thyme over everything. Then I've got a half a teaspoon of white wine vinegar. Just kind of put that all around. Just a little bit of salt in the rice, a little bit of the pepper. Get a little bit more broth. So yeah, it does take a little bit of time. Okay, these are looking real good. I usually like to go 1 cup at a time. Again, this is pretty hot broth. I go one cup at a time. Now I'm going to start mixing the vegetables all together. You know, risotto is one of those things. You just kind of have to take your time. Add a little bit of water, keep stirring it. It's a little bit of work, but you know what? It's so worth it. I can feel the rice is already starting to absorb up. See, I got a little bit of water there. See how there's water in there? So I just got to keep stirring it. Just keep stirring it. Okay, you see it's just starting to dry up a little bit, so I just got to keep stirring it just a little bit longer, but I know I'm going to put a little bit more broth in there. Okay, it's time to get another cup of broth. Add it in there. So it might feel a little bit soupy, but that's okay. That rice is going to go ahead and absorb all that broth. And is it going to taste great? Okay, it's starting to soak up again. See? See how it's soaking up? There's no more water in there. So then I'll go ahead and get another cup. Broth. And just reintroduce it back in again and continue stirring. I know this looks a little soupy, but you have to be patient with risotto. All right. That broth is soaked up again. I'll go ahead and put a little bit more in there. So I've actually used a little bit more broth than I normally do because I'm using a frying pan. Risotto is all about moisture, so it tells you when it's done. Now I'll go ahead and add my chopped up kale. You know, and this is totally up to you. Go ahead and stir this in. You know, somebody once asked me, how much liquid does it really take to make good risotto? You know, the rice tells you how much you need, but the basic rule of thumb is 1 cup to 3 cups of broth. But if I'm using a frying pan like I did, I ended up using a 1/4 cup. So it all depends on the rice. You want to get the rice so it's nice and tender. But let's go ahead and give this a taste. Put a little bit of kale on top of there. And let's give this a try. Very good. That is awesome. It takes a little while. It is a little bit labor intensive, but you know what? It is well worth it. Can you explain?